Theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive with Em and Warren.
Suzy, welcome back to Joy Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, it would be remiss of us not to mention that you are a supermodel. You've always been one, but it's been really affirmed in the last week. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's official now, I'm a model.
Yay!
Yeah, so I was invited to walk a fashion show last week for Australian Fashion Week in Sydney for the label Nicole and Ford, and was a great time. I thought I was going to catch COVID because there were so many people around, but I got out of it scot-free, so that's a major plus.
And you looked absolutely stunning.
And you wore, how long did it take to practice that walk? You just strutted that stage.
Look, I've not done anything like this for 28 or 30 years. I did a bit of that back in the mid-90s. But the day before, I literally sat down here, checked out my YouTube, looked for all the great walks of history, and then walked up and down my living room until I sweated like a pig. And I thought, all right, that's enough practice.
Oh, I love it. And it paid off. It honestly did. If you want to see Suzy's incredible fashion week, I don't even know what to call it, just superstardom. Head to Suzy's Instagram. You must. It's a must.
Absolutely. Now, Suzy, we are talking about 3 Months, which is streaming on Apple TV. What's it about?
This week, we find ourselves in South Florida, USA in the year 2011. 18-year-old Caleb finds out that he's been exposed to the HIV virus and has to wait 3 whole months before he can get the absolute all clear from his blood tests. The Australian gay icon Troye Sivan stars as Caleb in the movie 3 Months, available on Paramount+. It is a whimsical and witty coming-of-age film, one that brings our focus back to HIV and AIDS in the queer community. Younger generations seem to have moved on from the epidemic prematurely, so I do feel that it is admirable of Sivan, who is very much a role model, as well as the other filmmakers, to instigate this new discussion for gays in their teens and 20s. It's a gentle film with many funny sequences. Caleb's chemistry with his best friend Dara is a highlight. Their adventures as colleagues in a mini-mart are portrayed in a very charming way. Caleb also has a love interest, Esther, who is Indian American, and he demonstrates how the gay experience can be very different if you're from a minority culture. It is noteworthy that Caleb's grandmother is played by Ellen Burstyn, one of Hollywood's most beautiful stars, who is just mesmerizing in the film. Her husband is played by Louis Gossett Jr. Both these actors have been making movies for over 60 years now. It is so great to see them included in such a meaningful way. Ultimately, I didn't feel that 3 months was terribly engaging. It doesn't build much tension, and I found myself drifting off occasionally. There is something too cool about Troye Sivan's performance. He's a very natural actor, but doesn't seem to be able to convey a lot of emotional intensity when required, which means that we don't really invest too heavily into the story. Em and Warren, how did you find it?
Firstly, I loved that the Pride Centre not only made an appearance, but was such an integral part of the plot in this film. And of course, Joy 94.9 is situated in the Victorian Pride Centre. So that was a really lovely, I guess, connection that we have with the film, which I loved. I wondered, you mentioned when you were just talking, Suzy, that there were moments where you kind of zoned out. I wonder if, because I also had that feeling, and the whole idea of the film, this isn't giving it away, but is waiting this 3 months, anticipating which way, this test result is going to go. And obviously it's quite a, anxious and agonizing wait for the main characters. And I thought potentially the whole idea of the film was to make the audience wait. We're literally just living these long and, drawn out moments because that is what the main character is feeling. And I like it as a idea, but then also it does definitely make you kind of zone out sometimes. So then is that a mistake? Yeah.
I think that's a bit kind of you. I think there's I think there's a vagueness to everything, and which I see a lot in Troye Sivan's face, and I see a lot in that generation of young people where I don't know if they tell stories in a different pace or something. There's just something very, very gentle and very vague in the way they perceive the world, maybe, and you can feel it in this movie, like where you feel like there should be some tension. You don't really get that very much.
I found, and I think maybe it was personally, having lived through, the early 90s where HIV was a death sentence and there were no treatments initially, and friends were disappearing rather quickly. There were so many times you'd be going from one funeral to another, and each test, every time you'd go and have a HIV test, it was one of the most traumatic experiences, waiting for that result to come through. And I found, Em and Suzy, I struggled to remove my personal experience of the 90s and see the movie for what it was, which of course is a representation of the anxiety today of waiting for a HIV test result. And I feel like, we've come such a long way, but the stigma and shame is still there, isn't it? And that was portrayed well in the movie, despite the fact that, I thought overall it wasn't a very engaging movie.
I was hoping that there would be some comparison, because things have changed so much, we were saying about the death sentence, and a very severe, quick death sentence if you're caught in the 80s and 90s. You kind of don't see how the repercussions are going to be in 3 months. I would have liked to see, right, so if he did catch it, what does it mean? How different is it from what things used to be? Because it does feel like it should be very different. And because of that difference, does he need to be that fearful? And I do feel that their generation, like I said earlier, they kind of have moved the discussion away from it. Maybe it's because it's not such a terrible thing anymore. But I think for you and I, Warren, we're still in that generation where it's so terrifying. It's still so much in our bodies. Like I still go for my, 3 monthly checks, and, I'm not so terrified now because I'm on PrEP, but before I started on PrEP just a few years ago, it was still a terrifying thing when even if you knew they did all the right things. Yeah. So I think there is a generational difference there that could have, benefited in the movie.
It's sort of like a learned anxiety that we learnt, and I think that, we still experience that anxiety with each test that we undertake. But what did you both think of at the end?
The ending.
They flashed the photos, and I felt like that was like, oh, quick, we didn't get to talk about what happens to him once he goes to a certain place or what have you. And they quickly flashed all these photos up. And to me, that felt like, oh, just throw them up as photos and that'll complete the story for everyone. I felt like that's what it was doing. What did you think, Em?
I found the ending, I don't know how to talk about this without giving it away.
I know, it's hard,
but
isn't
I kind of liked the way that it ended I literally cannot say it without giving it away, but I kind of liked the ending because I thought that was that's the wrong word, but I thought that I actually don't know how to spoil it. Yeah, I can't say anything, but I actually appreciated the ending. I agree that it was a little bit like haphazard with the pictures because it was kind of like, oh yeah, this is what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know, Suzy. What did you think?
The photos look like there was an entire second movie there.
Yeah.
That they've revealed, in half a minute or something. I also thought that the ending could have been a bit more creative because, I thought, right, if we don't get an answer because we've been waiting, for the answer, how would we feel? Like, how would we feel about that character in this day and age being HIV positive? Does his future look any different? Because from what I understand, no, his future wouldn't change very much. Because it's not the same repercussions as we had experienced as Generation X's. But they kind of went a very, sort of predictable route, I guess, with the ending.
Something that I did like that it did, if you look at the disposability of friendships, when it no longer suits us or it risks severing connections with perhaps our family or something like that. And I think as part of the LGBTIQA plus community, we've all had that, haven't we? Where we've had friends that have, they haven't maintained that friendship because they would be outed or they would be exposed or it would put pressure on their family or something like that. And I thought the whole contrast between the two main characters being Caleb and Esther dealt with that well.
All right. You mean like dating if you're really out and you're dating someone who's not out as much. Yeah. I think that was good. And it was good that it gave an opportunity to look at cultural differences because, Esther is from an Indian Hindu background and there wasn't too much drama created from that, but you knew and you understood the inference that there are cultural differences. And I think that was beautifully handled.
Yeah. We're chatting with Suzy Rong about 3 months, which is streaming on Paramount Plus at the moment. What did you think of the real life Pedro Zamora who is a real life HIV activist and public figure who unfortunately passed away? What did we think about the treatment of Pedro in the film and also the highlighting of an activist as he was?
Well, it was good that there was some history being brought into the discussion, but I felt like it was too little. For me, it was too little. Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt the same, I thought. And the other thing I was going to say about the thing, there was Dara and her manager and what was going on there. I mean, there was like a whole subplot. I wanted to know what was going on, and I didn't sort of that touched on that it happened.
True.
And then it was like, oh, hang on, how did that resolve itself?
It didn't.
They threw it in. It was fascinating. It was interesting. It added some spice to it, and then it just disappeared.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that everyone's starting to become pansexual these days. Like it's no longer like it's not even a storyline of, oh, does that mean that she's gay? Does that mean she's a lesbian? Does that mean she's bi? You just kind of go that, well, people will, fall in love with whoever these days, and we're no longer that surprised.
It's absolutely great.
What is our homework for next week?
Next week, I invite you to check out one of my favorite reality competition shows, Legendary, streaming on Binge. It takes the New York ballroom scene into our living rooms with different voguing houses duking it out to win $100,000. That's Legendary.
We're going back to the voguing houses.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Warren loved these, right?
Oh.
Am I wrong in thinking that?
I'm thinking of, what was it called?
Pose. Yeah. So this is sort of like a modern day reality version of Pose. Not so much drama, but these people just coming in as different houses to compete with different themes and different styles. It's an amazing show. I'm taking this opportunity to discuss this because it's season 3 starting this week. I don't know if there are going to be very many talking points. It's just an amazing show to watch them dance, but I'm sure we'll find a way to talk about it.
So it's
next
called
week.
Legendary, and where's it streaming, Suzy?
It's on Binge.
Perfect. Suzy, thank you so much for joining us as always.
Thank you very much, and I'll see you next Tuesday.
Yes, you will. Thanks so much, Suzy. Bye. That's Suzy Rong.